Welcome everyone to the Reading Around Corner. I am your host, Leon. If this is your first time here, welcome. If it is not, welcome back. Welcome back. We are going to start with the non-spoiler part of this review for Cake Eater by Alison Dunham. This book is a standalone. Though, the way it leaves itself, it could eventually turn into a series, if the author ever wanted to. This is not normally the type of book I would read either, to be honest, but I'll explain that in just a minute. About this book, Cake Eater will take readers to a dazzling world full of breathless luxuries, deadly secrets, and a thrilling romance that attempts to rewrite history itself. Decadent, thrilling, and romantic, this Black Mirror-esque reading of the reign of one Marie Antoinette is perfect for the fans of the belles and American royals. Which I've never read any of that, so I wouldn't know anything about that stuff. What made me read this book? Well, to be frank, it's because it was written by a college friend and I wanted to support her. So I knew the author in college, and when she sat there and wrote the book and I found out about it, of course I wanted to sit there and buy the book and read it, and just to purchase the book to support her, for one. And for two, I have the book, so why not read it? And no, since this is a supported book, it will not be an unhaul ever, because I just want to make sure that she knows that I'm supporting her in any way, shape, or form that I can support her. So, the blurb. The year is 3070, and Marie Antoinette has just arrived at the glittering, thrilling palace of Versailles to marry the shy, soft-spoken Lousi-Auguste. I can't speak today. But beneath the luxurious world lies a sinister underbelly and an uncompromising elite who want to keep Mary and Louise pawns in a deadly game. Will history repeat itself, or will these doomed lovers outwit their enemies and escape their grisly fate? Marie Antoinette, as she was forced to change herself to fit the Franks' way of thinking, had to leave behind her beloved Austral lands to marry the Frank Prince Louis, someone with zero social influence on the Alps and the one chosen to become king. Mary must adapt to her new life in order to stay in Alp sensation and gain the love of the Frank kingdom, something that is harder to do than she thought. Louise is shy and an introvert that rather code all day long. The setup of the main characters took a while, as the characters had to establish the person she was. Mary had to establish what she was, and the person that she was forced to become, and the other character setup was seen through her eyes. The motives for Mary and Louise are shown more than the rest of them because of the perspective. How did the characters react to the situation? Just how I imagine someone that has to live up to others' expectations but have a heart of gold and yet is still just a child herself. Same goes for the other characters that are teens. The adults react the way those in control always act. Unstoppable and in control and large and unmovable. The genre is young teen adult historical European fiction. Did this live up to my expectations? I want to say no, but the book did give me exactly what it said it would, with a twist. The book betrayed me. And if you want to know why or how, read the book to find out how it can betray you. Or watch the spoiler section of this review. Whatever you want to do. It's up to you. Which character did I relate to the most? Louis the most. He's the one I related to. He is an introvert, and so am I. I love to read like he does, but mine is for pleasure while his is to learn. What secondary character stood out the most? Therese, Princesse de Lamballe, has a lot of masks, and she was hiding herself from people that she did not trust, which was practically everybody. What was most important? The characters of the plot. The plot plays a large part within the story, but it is characters that move it forward. Each of their reactions and thoughts had to be the way they were, or else the plot would have never gone anywhere. Because that's just what it is. It had only one voice, and it did not affect my reading at all. Should you go and read this story? If you are a history buff, loved Marie Antoinette and Louis-Auguste, and want to read a different twist to their story, give this a read. It is also a slow burn romance story, which you don't often get out of a 400 and some odd page book. But yes, it is definitely a slow burn. I felt like it took forever for the romance to kick off. Forever. If you do not want to be spoiled, you may leave. But while you're leaving, if you could please drop a like, a comment, or even your lovely subscription, that would be a beautiful. I promise. It will help me out in many, many, many ways. I'll give you a minute to leave now. In the book, you meet the main characters, the side characters, and the important recurring characters. The characters are Maria, or Marie Antoinette. She is a princess from the Austrian land sent to marry Louis-Auguste of the Frank Kingdom, the Dauphine. To become the Dauphine, and eventually the king and queen. She finds herself deep in a strange land that wants nothing more than to control her every move. She tried to be her own person and help the Frank people, but she was stopped at every turn or made to look like a horrible person. She had an unfair trial when she was arrested at the end of the book, and she was supposed to be executed, but a lifelike android died in her stead. Because in this one, there are androids. They look a lot like normal people, and they can bleed like normal people. That's a little odd in my opinion, but yes, she tried to support him by wearing, like the wasteland people who had to live in the waste. She tried wearing neckties for it. She tried to find out why people hated her, because on the apps, all she saw was the positive comments, but she never saw none of the negatives. When she started learning about the negative comments, she was like, okay, I gotta do something about it. And Louis hacked into it and helped her out, and she was trying to show people that she was actually a great person. And like one of the videos she did with her friend, Teresa, they're talking about what happens if we don't make such and such. She said let them eat cake, and that was taken and used in an interview out of context to make her look like a horrible person. So yeah, the first estate, which was what was controlling everything, made sure that she knew nothing and was in the dark, and they also controlled the history of the world, so she couldn't even learn about the history of anything. She did find out some things, like her name and all the names of the people that she knows were set up in a certain way, like the past, and she couldn't gain access to that stuff because it was tightly controlled. I read a review where they sat there and said that why didn't she sit there and learn all she could about everything that happened before the event, and in all honesty, some of the information was lost, and the rest of it that wasn't lost was locked up so tight that only the first estate, the people who actually ruled the Frank Kingdom, had control of the information and could distribute to whoever they wanted to, and nobody else could know. So even though she did find out snippets of everything, it was extremely difficult for her to even find out anything. They tried to hide a lot of the information. So there's that. And then you have Louis-Auguste Bourbon, the Dauphine of the Frank Kingdom, the one to become king. He is a shy young man that took forever to warm up to Mary, enough to consummate their marriage. Like, it was like this half of the book, okay? This half of the book, it took forever for them to just be together. The slow burn was very real, like very real. He knew things were not what they seemed, but he was too afraid to dig deeper until Mary came along. He loved coding, and that's how they actually chatted for the first time without anybody knowing it. But that's because his whole entire everything was bugged. All rooms and places of place was bugged for listening devices and videos, so they could see and hear everything. That's why they knew that when they got married that they did not consummate They did find, they did do it later. He was arrested and he had a very quick and unfair trial. He was beheaded. He actually died. I mean, she didn't get to see it, but she did hear about it. She did hear all the fans and people and everything screaming and hollering, and some for joy, some for terror. His lifelike android had not been completed. The thing that confuses me the most about that is that they had forever to complete his. His has been around, he'd been around for the longest time in the Frank Kingdom. So there was no reason why his was not completed, but Mary's was. That didn't make sense, besides for the plot of Mary living at the end to help take down the First Estate and the regime. So that's that. And it was a betrayal, because like, if you're gonna have Mary's android be ready, even though she'd been there for the least amount of time, you should have had Luis's already done so he could survive too, because like, possibility of her being pregnant was there, and even though you don't find out and it's left in the air, it's still kind of a shitty thing to do, to leave Mary on her own to raise a kid. And yeah, that's the only thing I really didn't like about the book was that ending. It was, I thought they could have brought Louis and saved him. Maybe put it in the very, very end, like somebody else had saved him and they hadn't met up yet. Mary's mother, the Empress of the Austrian lands, you don't actually learn her name. She knew the kingdoms of Austria and Frank were dying and warned Mary of them. She tried to stop the execution of both Mary and Louise, but could not do anything because the First Estate didn't allow it. For one, because they didn't care what happened, as long as they stayed in control. And honestly, the people should have just gone up against the First Estate instead of going up against Louis and Mary, because they were teenagers. They didn't know nothing. And if you thought they did, then obviously you didn't do enough of your research. Ambassador Mercy, the man that was tasked with bringing Mary to the Frank Kingdom and is supposed to be her trusted advisor, he controls what she sees and hears from the Austrian lands. While Contessa de Noailles was the one in charge of taking care of Mary and what she wore, what she said to the public, and how she was supposed to act, she controlled the social media that Mary saw while in the Frank Kingdom. You have Joseph, Mary's brother. He's only mentioned within the story. You actually never learn anything else about him besides that Mary has pictures of them on her phone, and she thought about who would get along with Joseph, and that her brother would take care of her brother and sister-in-laws when they escaped, which I actually did not like. Alice Bourbon and Philippe Bourbon, who were less about the people, I honestly think that maybe they should have been the ones that had been caught, and not Louise, because Louise was like an innocent little cuddly bear, and you just did something I didn't like. Okay. Stanley's Bourbon is a brother to Louise, the older one. He's outgoing, buff, only cares about taking pictures of his body and dating girls. He is actually forced to get married to a woman he had never met by his grandfather before his grandfather passed away. They did not get on. He and his wife do escape to Austria before they could be arrested. Philip Bourbon is the youngest brother of Louise, and he loves to party. He escapes to Austria before he could be arrested as well. He didn't have to get married yet. That wasn't in the cards for him. Elizabeth Bourbon, Louis' younger sister, she wanted to be a doctor and had fallen in love with a woman. They were almost broken apart by social constructs, but after Louis and Mary's android were executed, they released her. She had been arrested for being a Bourbon simply because they wanted to actually just kill all Bourbons. She was reunited with the woman she loved, Jeanne Bisset. Louis, the well-beloved King Bourbon, was the king of Frank in the beginning of the book, until he dies from what is called the wasting disease. He allowed himself to be controlled by the First Estate in order to live a life of luxury and without worry. Georgette is a young woman from what is referred to as the wastelands. She left that life behind to live an easier life because living in the wastelands was a hardship and most certainly a death sentence. I mean, her brother died. And that's why Mary had wore that red scarf to support the death of the wastelander and Georgette's brother. Adelaide Fraser was a historian that wanted to preserve the history from before the event. She leaked information to Mary, and because she leaked the information, she was made to vanish without a trace because they did not approve of that stuff. They had to hush-hush everything. Because Mary learned about fires and breaking out in Paris and all kinds of bad stuff happening, and it was supposed to be hush-hush from her. She wasn't supposed to know. Theresa de la Balle was a princess whose husband died because of the first estate. She's a second cousin of Louise, and she actually disliked the whole family besides Louise, and she was part of the resistance that wanted to end the Bourbon family line. And even though she liked Louise and was cousins to Louise, she still wanted him dead for some unknown reason. When she met and got to know Mary, she realized that Mary and Louise weren't bad people and that they should be spared because they were innocent and didn't know anything. And they were ignorant. And yes, sometimes being ignorant is not a get out of free card. But in this case, yeah, it was. They didn't know anything. Everything was controlled. And yes, Louise could have hacked in and closed down stuff, but then eventually that would have been taken from him. And they were going to be replaced by androids. So they were going to end up being disappeared and, put to death by the first estate. So they were in a hard place, and they tried to do everything they could. She helped rescue Mary after running away for her own safety because she did not want to murder them. And so she ran away from the people who were doing the uprising, and she ran away from the first estate as well to keep herself safe. You meet someone who becomes a friend to Theresa and Mary, which is Yolanda, the Duchess of de Polignac. Her husband Jules worked for the first estate, I believe, and was I don't know, part of the reason why her Theresa's husband died. I don't remember really. Madame du Barry was the mistress to the king, and you just meet her briefly. She's just there. Monsieur Angoulême was head executive of the Franc branch of Servotek and a member of the First Estate Bureau of Business Owners. He had control over the androids that were sent to protect and control Mary and her husband, and at the end they did not lift a finger nor a hand to help the Bourbon family out when they refused to play along to their little game. Captain Axel Fersen was an android based off of the real Axel Fersen. He was made just like the real guy with memories, blood, and feelings, somewhat. He was first controlled by the First Estate and then by Jean Bisset. Josephine Bourbon, she was from the Sandorini Estates, and Mary Stanalis, or Stan for short. She did not like living in the Frank Kingdom because they ate meat, and where she was from they ate tofu and other things because it was harder to get a hold of meat. Murapas was a trusted advisor for Louise that controlled the information Louise found out about and what he did for the public. You do get to meet Louise's father, which I don't remember his name, and he showed him that not everything was as it seemed, but he wasn't brave enough to step over a border to find out what was going on. Sergeant Amelia Mercer was a tech specialist that controlled the androids. Jean Bisset was a student on a scholarship that wanted to learn about androids. She was good, and she hacked into Axel Furnish's program to control them. She also hacked into the program for Marie's android to control her. She and Elizabeth were in love. Maximilian Robespierre. He was the leader of the revolution, the one that wanted all the Bourbons to die. He did not even care if Mary was pregnant or not at the end. And he didn't care about her innocence, that she was actually innocent. He just wanted them gone as a way to show that yes, things can go back, things can go in their direction for the common people, for the Third Estate, if none of the royalty was left. There's only 2 more I'm going to mention. Madame Rohan was the owner of the Pixar app that Mary used to love using. She controlled it, and she was the first estate bureau of business owners that owned and controlled the royal family. In the end, she did nothing as innocents were killed because she just wanted money and power. Then you have Legrand. He was actually the one that helped Mary escape and put a robot in place at risk of his own life. And he had tried to speak to her about stuff, and he's the one that granted her the ability to see Louise before he was nixed. And it was a sad moment. So the only POV was Marie Antoinette's. So you don't really get to see what anybody else is thinking throughout the whole thing. And even at the end where the android takes over, you actually don't know it's the android until the next chapter after that. Like, seriously, you think it is her going to her death, and then after the next episode, she woke up and we realized that, oh, she didn't actually die, it was something else that happened. So you get a little false narrative at that point. When she goes into the elevator and gets knocked out and the android takes over, you get the android's narrative, which is actually a false narrative. My favorite character was Lousi-Auguste because he was a sweet, innocent young man that was shy when it came to anything sexual with his wife. Like, he's like, I gotta get to know you. I can't just fall into bed with you. I'm sorry. He's like, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I have to love you in order to be able to commit to something like that. And he also knew that they were being watched at all times, which of course would make anybody uncomfortable knowing that you're being watched. He loved hacking and coding, and he wanted to do right for his people, but he was very afraid. He was very afraid for his life, and that's why he didn't do anything. He thought his death would bring peace to his people, and that's why he allowed himself to die. Did not fight it, but it did not. He died for nothing, as some kings and queens often did. It didn't help, because the First Estate still existed, and there's still a fight between the First Estate and the Third Estate. My most disliked character was Madame Rohan for making Mary out to be an evil android-loving person on Pixar to trash her reputation, all because Mary did not want to collaborate with her on fashion on Pixar. And Pixar was like, I guess, Instagram in this book. It was told in chronological order with appropriate language for the young adult genre that it was. Nothing explicit. No swear words either. There was foreshadowing in the truth of the world through Adelaide, the way Theresa acted, the comments on pictures and posts on Pixar that were not friendly or happy, the hologram wall that Louis' father showed him. The suspense was built slowly through the whole novel, and when it tumbled over, it was good because, I mean, like, it was just like suspense on whether or not they were going to win control of their own lives, or if they were going to end up falling into the hands of the Third Estate or the First Estate and either becoming justice for evil or dying. It was very good. The title of the book, I didn't have control out of order. Okay, the background of Mary, Louise, Georgette, and Theresa were explained enough to understand their actions. Also, there was just enough information to understand the others to an extent, but a lot of it was left up in the air for the readers to discern. The title of the book means the code Mary used on the forums of Who Watches to remain invisible to everyone as a Delphine and Queen. But it was later found out who she was, so she couldn't even speak anymore on there. She was trying to make people see that Louis and Mary were not bad people. The cover of the book is just a picture of Mary using her holophone in a mirror reflection of the real Mary Antoinette that lived a long, long time ago. In this book, definitely, and in my life too. What stood out as memorable was the way Mary and Louise fell slowly in love with each other, as if they were made for each other, regardless of the fact that they had only known each other for a grand total of 7 months. Their love story was enjoyable to read, even the ending, because Mary and Louise really loved each other and they really supported each other and they didn't want each other to die. My favorite passage from the story is, there are those who know far more about our history than the rest of us, and that information, that historical data, is strictly controlled, and then it's used particularly on you and the rest of the court. You are a recreation, a distraction, a scapegoat, a tool they think they can wield more successfully than in the ancient days. Your names, your alliances, your causes, your words, they are scripted by those who have put the Bourbons on the throne. But no matter who controls a monarchy, an oligarchy, whatever name chosen, whatever trappings dress it up, it is a cycle doomed to repeat itself, unless the wheel is broken or is steered in an entirely different direction. Adelaide said that to Mary, and one of the reasons why she was vanished. It was her way of trying to wake Mary up to the reality, with the hopes that she would do something to change fate, destiny, and prevent those in control to win, as well as saving, the historicalness of before the event and saving the Third Estate. My favorite quote: "The smirk is new, only appeared recently. Not only do I love him, but I think I have an enormous crush on him too." Mary is totally, madly in love with Louise, and Louise feels the same for Mary. What I thought about the ending of the book, it broke my heart. I disliked the ending. I hated that Louise was dead and Mary was alive without him. I did not like the fact that she was going to enter into the fray of trying to bring down the First Estate, putting her life and the potential life of a baby at risk. I think she only wanted to put herself into a dangerous position in the hopes that death would allow her to meet with Louise again, because she wanted to die at the end. After Louise was dead, she just end me. I don't care. I don't care anymore. Without Louise, my life is over. So the resolve of the plot was good though, and the way that it was left open-ended, there is potential for a sequel and everything, so there's that. But I like the way it was open-ended, as in you can make up whatever happens afterwards. What book did this remind me of? What book did this remind me of? Honestly, I have never read a book quite like this before. I have never wanted to throw a book as much as I did this one before the end. Because of the ending. Because most books I read have a happy ending, and if they don't, there is a sequel where a happy ending is coming. So, to read a book where there is no happy ending. Nobody, but I guess none of the main characters get their happy ending. Teresa doesn't get a happy ending. Elizabeth doesn't get a happy. Well, actually, Elizabeth does get a happy ending because she ends up with her lover, GM. Louise does not get a happy ending. Mary does not get a happy ending. They don't get happy endings. And that is something I've never actually, read in a book before. Where nobody gets a happy ending. This book is a standalone. This book is a standalone. Okay, you know that? Yes? Okay. I rate this book a 4.5, to be honest. But a 4 for Goodreads, because Goodreads doesn't do 4.5. And it could have been a 5 if Louise had lived. If you had given me Louise and allowed him to live and be with Mary, it would be a 5. Yeah, that's how much I love the book. So, if you think I deserve a like, a comment, or even your lovely subscription, drop it down below. I will see you next illusion.